So my name is Gidd Sasser. In right now, I'm with Kansas Wesleyan University. I'm the head coach, run the program here at the collegiate level. I also do several activations, side projects such as the Seattle Skyfoxes.
How long have you been an Overwatch coach?
See, Overwatch, I would say probably about betas when I started working. And with that is I was coaching while also playing for UNC Charlotte, and then transitioned over the summer into a coach role. Prior to Overwatch, I had about 7 years of experience across the League of Legends, Warhammer, StarCraft, etc.
Have you ever coached like a different game?
Oh yeah, so I just touched on that. I guess I jumped the gun a little bit there. Yeah, so I started my first coaching experience in League of Legends. Prior to that, I had done a little bit, like I said, Warhammer, StarCraft, but League of Legends was the first time where I was working with several teams. At that time, were competing in like side tournaments, online division, and then from there moved to Overwatch. At Charlotte, I touched every single game. So if you can name it, if it exists, I worked with it. Rocket League, Super Smash Brothers, FGC in general, etc.
When did you first knew that you wanted to start coaching Overwatch?
Before the release, actually, I had gotten a little, I will say, burnt out on all my other projects. And when Overwatch was announced, it was new, it was FPS based, which is my original start 10 years ago was in FPS, Star Wars Battlefront. And so this was kind of like, it was the first time in a while I had been excited to do something. I said, hey, this is what I want to get back into. And here I am with another collegiate program and still doing Overwatch 24/7.
How did you learn to be a coach?
A lot of trial and error. I think the biggest thing when you go into it is understanding that you don't know everything. Even if you are supposed to be teaching, your players or your staff, hey, this is what you should do, or this is, hey, let's try this next time. You basically you have to fail to learn. I mean, you have to accept that that's going to happen, and that's what I did. I did a lot of failing to learn what I have now. Um, and again, that's about 10 years worth of it. So it doesn't happen overnight. And I would say that to anybody, it's just like going through school. It's just like going to a job. You have to be able to take the good and the bad with it and eventually pull those pieces that did work out and build your own program with it.
What do you do when you first meet a new team?
So there's a standard, aside from introductions, like, hey, here's my history, etc. When I first started working with a team, I don't jump in right away. I like to see how they play, either in a scrim, a match, whatever it is, and understand everybody's role. Like, okay, you'll have players that are more vocal. Okay, why are they more vocal? You'll have players that are more mechanical. Why are they more mechanical? Why do they have the skills? Why does this team work? Why do they not work? And I will review VODs. I will talk with them individually to better understand each player on a separate level. That way we can take all the pieces and build a team. And that's usually the first week with every team I do. And I found that doing that instead of just jumping in and throwing, hey, do this, do that, do that, do this, has worked astronomically better in the long run because you're not creating a bandage situation. You're actually taking the time to meld and get to a point that you would see like on a traditional sports.
How do you feel about the Overwatch League?
I think the Overwatch League is great personally. I work aside from collegiate, I'm in contenders right now. So that goal is to get to the Overwatch League. It's so new though that there's a lot of trial and error going on. Personally, I would like to see a longer season instead of all the games played out at once. I think that's going to eventually come. You'll probably see that, and then, I think what it's done is it's helped establish that esports can be done on a global level outside of what you see in League of Legends, CS:GO. You don't need, these long-term games that have been around to make it happen. And of course, Blizzard had to put a lot of money into that, but who doesn't, right? You have to spend to get. So I think Overwatch League in the long run has set a new example of what to do in esports, and a lot of programs are going to follow suit. companies, etc.
What are some tips for starter Overwatch coaches?
Watch a lot of video and don't take on more than what you can do. The issue I see with a lot of people trying to get into coaching is that they want to learn, which is great, but they want to learn by doing as much as possible, and that's not good. What happens, and I actually talked about this the other day, is you'll see a coach say, "Okay, I want to work with 1, 2, and 3 teams," but what all you're doing is you're spreading yourself apart, you're spreading your time, your knowledge, your energy, and you're not helping those teams by working with all 3 in one day, right? It would be like trying to do 3 jobs. So my goal would be to find one team, and while you're working with that team, expand into, say, social media, do write-ups, like little blog posts. They don't have to catch the attention of people, but it builds, the standard for you. One thing that I've told a couple people I've worked with, a couple players I've worked with, one by Spoon, I've worked with Twistin, is that you should take a business class or a marketing class as soon as you can, because that will help you understand some of the basics that you might not learn on your own. And I think that in just that short little period with that class will bring you to whatever your next level is, or allow you to overcome your plateau, because now you have a fundamental understanding.
So what do you think about high school esports teams?
Teams in general or the scene?
Like high schools having actual teams, like
Uh,
governed by the school.
Okay. So my thoughts on high school teams, I think that it's been a long time coming, and I'm a little upset that you don't see as much of it, but I'm super happy that it is finally coming to light, that you are seeing a lot of high schools. I've worked with activations out in Rhode Island for the high school scene, North Carolina. I was just talking about that. I feel like these programs, it's no different than, say, a chess club, or for some high schools, a football team, right? It creates another avenue for people who share the same interests to play the games that they love on a competitive level, but it teaches you all the same skills, right? Camaraderie, teamwork, communication. And I think starting that at a high school level is, if not now, uh, will be more important than collegiate. It will be the avenue that pushes you to the collegiate scene and then onward to the pro scene. And I expect once that happens, we'll see a draft system, just like you do in football, baseball. I expect all of that for in the next couple of years, the way it's going, and I think that's healthy for the scene. I think it's great for anybody in high school right now, and they need to take advantage. If the school already has a program, they need to take advantage of that, because it will put you an insurmountable amount of steps ahead of anybody else who's just getting into that in college.
So what do you think is the difference from high school teams versus college teams?
So it depends. Here's how I would look at. I would break it up like this. So you have your JV and your varsity teams, right? A lot of high schools do that. A lot of colleges do that. A high school team, I don't look at as being too different from, say, a freshman team in college. You'll probably, unless recruited, you'll see about the same skill, same mentality. Once you go above that, especially in a program, let's say KW or Maryville, good friend Dan there, actually the director of that program. When you have people who run a program that understand the industry, that's where the difference is. And you'll see it in your sophomore and your junior and your senior year, where the knowledge, the practice, the support, financial, mental, physical support, is vastly more than the high school level at this time. High school can mirror college or the collegiate scene in the upcoming years, and there are some programs that do. But I think that's the biggest difference, is the amount of support that you would get or do get. And I don't foresee the gap closing between high school and college teams anytime soon, unless there's just a large dump of money. But I think high school has its advantages, though, because when you go to high school and you're playing on these teams, more often than not, you're doing it because you want to, right? And because you're having fun. And there's a little bit less pressure, the way I look at it, when you're playing on a high school team, that allows you to enjoy it sometimes more than college, because you do have something on the line. You're playing for scholarship, anything like that. And that's a constant. That doesn't go away. You're always playing for something. So I do think on a base level, there's a little bit of like envy from the college scene that, sometimes, hey, we just want to play and have fun, which is what video games are all about. So
Who do you think is the best overall Overwatch player?
Now,
Matter anyone on the earth?
ooh, see, you can't do that to me because I got my own team. I'll name a couple people. I'll not do Al. So let me go outside of Al. I think Al, you can take your pick, and any player can be the best on a given day, such as like Pine, Flower, etc. I think outside of that, if we're looking, let's say Order in Korea, was a really good player. I don't think he's had the proper coaching staff. LiftQ is probably one of the best support players I've ever seen, especially on Zenyatta. I think right now, if we're looking at like the T2 scene, it's really hard. I think Goats had a lot of talented players. Kaluj, Gator, they were very talented, but again, they didn't have the proper coaching staff and mistakes were made. Then, of course, like the Skyfoxes, the team that I work with, everybody on there is a world-class player. Hidan is a World Cup player. Guru is collegiate and contenders. Then we have Boostio and Far, who are probably going to see some OWL contracts here in the future. So I know that's not one name, but I kind of want to touch, that gives you a little bit of like Portugal, Korea, North America right there.
So wait, do you have Boostio on your team?
We do, yeah.
Oh, so you're that team. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the team. That's the team. Not the collegiate team, the contenders team, Skyfox.
So how do you feel about bronze players?
In Overwatch?
Yeah, in Overwatch.
Okay. I think bronze players are there. They're one of two things. They're there intentionally because people are just deranking, which is unfortunate, or they're players that truly just want to play the game for fun. Even if they're competitive, if you're sitting at a bronze level and you're not climbing, that means when it comes down to it, you're either not looking at what you need to improve or you don't want to, right? And so at that point, I think that you're a bronze player just playing for fun, and I don't expect much from a player. The difference is though is with a good coach, even if you don't have the mechanical skill, they can guide you on how to climb. And I've seen it many, many times. In fact, with Kansas Wesleyan, we didn't have anybody in bronze, but we had people in silver and plat. And within 2 weeks of just talking simple technique, what you should play into what comp, it was about a 700 average SR difference, like in game, 700 average gained. And I think that's really what has to happen. A bronze player just needs somebody to show them what they need to be doing. And then if they don't climb after that, it's because they don't want to.
What are some tips to like help those bronze players?
Well, what I usually see is, again, a lack of like fundamentals. Watching streams of your favorite player in the role that you want to play will help. And I don't mean like, hey, just put it up and sit there and go, oh yeah, that was cool. No, I mean when you watch it, you go, okay, why did they do this? Why did they move this direction? Why did they decide to ult then? What are they saying in comms? And then going in and not mimicking, but applying what you've learned and trying to find your own pace, so to speak, of how to play. Another thing is understanding what role you're good at. A lot of players will want to play DPS. It's the flashy, they want to be the fair that gets the 6-man ult. But at that level, let's say you're trying to play Widow, right? Well, if you're in bronze, I would say it's safe to say that you probably struggle with aim from time to time, and it might be better to spend your efforts learning a support like Geta, who is pretty straightforward. Reinhardt, Winston, Diva, somebody who takes away the skill you need to aim and forces you to focus on like your mechanical ability or your positional awareness. And I've seen a lot of players climb very fast once they've done that. And then once you get to a period where you're now feeling better about your fundamentals, then you can switch back to try the role that you really originally wanted, like Anna. or Zenyatta. Or you can go back to trying a full-on dive out. Winston is a little bit more technical sometimes, but that's what I would say. Watch a lot of the people for the role that you want. I don't think watching Owl will help you out that much. You'll get comps for that patch, but you're not going to get an individual view of the player that you want. And also just talking to somebody in the industry. There's a lot of coaches out here, a lot of managers too, analysts that will help for free. I mean, that you can pay for a coach, but there's so many that just love the job that they will sit down with you for 30 minutes, an hour or so, and just say, hey, try this, or hey, change your sensitivity to this, and they come up with a little plan for you. And I've yet to see anybody that cared enough not climb after talking and after reviewing. And one more note, I know I'm going on about this, but record your own games. When you play quick play, rank, doesn't matter. Record your own games and go back and watch that and see, okay, I got caught here. Why did I get caught here? Oh, I overextended. Okay, why did I overextend? I didn't listen to the team call, stuff like that. And then once you do that enough, it's just like, moving the mouse and the keys, your hand, your mind will do it subconsciously. You will remember what not to do, and you will do what you should, or at least go the opposite direction, which hopefully is good in that situation.
What is something that most players mess up on?
Hmm. That's a very wide. It's a very wide question. Let me think. On a base level, I would say it's just the fundamentals. They're practicing the wrong thing. That's what I see a lot. You'll get a very high school player, mechanical, can do all the trick shots. They can outplay everybody just because they're better, but they can't climb, right? And instead of understanding that, hey, it's not the mechanics that are keeping you back, it's your knowledge of the game, they continue to focus on, oh, well, I just need to basically click heads better, which is a common term a lot of players will use. And it's like, no, no, no. You can click heads all day, but if you're not influencing the game, you're not helping the team, you're not in the right spot, what's the point? You can get a 3K on Ilios and still lose the team fight because you then proceed not to go to point and help your team, right? And I think that's what I see the biggest, I guess, slip up from players is not realizing that they're focusing on the wrong practice or the wrong skill. And again, that ties back into, hey, just talk to a coach, an analyst, a manager. More often than not, that's like a simple 2-minute, like, oh, hey, yeah, I already know what's going on. And they'll just say, yeah, look at this. And then that gets you on the right track.
How would you try to start an esports team?
Okay. I'll answer this question based off of the assumption that there's no funding. So you're trying to do it, without any funding. With that, you have to decide what level you want to play at, right? T1 is OWL, so probably unlikely unless you drop a lot of money. T2, contenders, the very top of contenders trials in some cases, which also includes money. So you're looking at the T3 scene, collegiate, and from there, let's say you're a free agent, you're not with any org, you're trying to establish a team to maybe go into trials. You need to build relationships. If you don't have that built already, it's going to be difficult, but you need to spend the time, get in the discords, the OW, the collegiate hub, etc. Make sure you're all in that and start talking, start looking, look for people who are LFT and speak to them, get to understand, who's out there. Once you know who's out there and how realistic of a team you can put together, then you decide, okay, what is it that you actually want to do? Are you trying to do this team for experience? Are you trying to do it to climb up into the T2, T1 scene? And from there, once you make that decision, a lot of people decide, we want to get into trials, right? We want to play an open. Then you need to establish that team, the players. A lot of players will not play with each other without some kind of staff back end, a coach, manager, etc. A lot of players that actually have the drive to do it won't play with that. It's just like running a business. It's no different than being the CEO or, say, like a store manager. When you commit to that, you have to be willing to give up a lot of sleep, a lot of time, and stay committed, because you're now bringing in other people who are going to do the same thing. So when you're building this, you need to build it with that in mind, that there's no money. Again, I'm answering this as if there's no funding. There's no money involved in it. Everybody's giving up their time, their sleep, so on, to be a part of this. And so you have to give as much, if not more, if you're starting the team. If you're a player on the team, you have to do a lot more than that. I don't necessarily think somebody running a team should be a player on the team. And that might be controversial for some people, but I think separating yourself from that allows for you to make sound and just choices when the time arises. So again, just to touch base, learn the scene, understand who's available, understand what you can realistically do when building a team, and then set a goal. And that goal should be, again, realistic. Like, hey, we just made this team. We want to play an open. Let's finish top 50 in open, right? And then next time, finish top 18, top 16, etc. Just you keep going and you keep setting realistic goals for you. And eventually, if you do that and you put the time in, people will notice. And hey, you might get an org that wants to reach out and sign you.
So how do you feel about LFT?
Uh, it's a really good way to recruit. Seeing LFT is nice in the sense of being able to, for me, tell who's looking for a team. It's pretty straightforward. I think without it, it'd be a lot harder to recruit players on a competitive level, because we see esports as a whole is different than traditional sports. You do have sites, you do have orgs that are like Be Recruited, that allow you to go on there and say, hey, I'm looking for a college, or etc. You know, I want to play for a team. There's not really a big namesake in like the T2, T3, T1 scene other than word of mouth. So having LFT, I think, helps out a lot. I wish it would go away. And by that, I mean, I wish it would go away because there is a better option for players. There's a better way to find out who is a free agent, who's not. And hopefully that's coming soon. There are several avenues that you can do for that, but none has caught on last I've looked. So word of mouth is still the biggest thing. You see LFT, go, oh, hey, that guy's great, let's get him. That's about how that goes.
So what do you think about parents saying it's just a waste of time?
Oh yeah, I get this one a lot. Okay, when parents say that, more often than not, they're not saying it to be malicious. They don't say it to like, hey, we're gonna crush your hopes and dreams. They're saying it because they don't understand what esports has become. 10 years ago, it would have been very difficult. I mean, very difficult to argue, hey, this is what I want to do. And if you didn't have a parent who was 100% gun ho on whatever you wanted, it took a lot of convincing. A lot of, hey, like, this is becoming something. Nowadays, when I talk with a parent, or even when I heard the same thing, 10 years ago, it takes a lot of, no, hey, like, this is what it is. We have these leagues. If I was to tell a player, hey, I advise them on how you would respond to it. I say, don't get upset. Don't don't argue, so to speak. Don't be mad at your parents, but try to explain, like, this is a venue that is a job now. Esports is, I mean, we're back. You can throw out like the typical Robert Kraft, Rick Fox, names that people would know, Shaquille O'Neal, to try and kind of bridge that gap and say, hey, they've invested in this, so obviously it's not a waste of time. Especially if and if they don't know the name, then you go, hey, the owner of the Patriots invested in this. A lot of people don't like the Patriots, but it's still a big name that you can bring up. Going from there, the next thing is you kind of have to prove it, right? You can't just say, hey, I want to do esports, I want to be a pro player, or I want a manager, I want to coach, and then not show something for it, right? So you need to show that you can. And a really good way of doing that now, especially coming out of high school, and I'll go reference back to Be Recruited, is you can get on there, social media, you can get on there, put your name on there, and you can say, hey, mom, dad, whatever, this school has reached out to me, or this school is offering X scholarship. I want to go for it. I want to apply for it. Play some online tournament. Show that you're making progress. It's no different than playing like baseball or football. No parent ultimately wants their kid to play in a traditional sport if they're not going to go anywhere, right? Like why spend the time on something that your skills could be put to use elsewhere, right? Like, so if you show that you're getting better, you're learning, there's a community that you can turn it into a scholarship for school, and make them feel comfortable. Like, another issue is that a lot of parents say it's a waste of time because they think it takes away from studying. And it's your responsibility as a player, as their son, daughter, to show that you can handle both of those. If you do that, if you keep up with your studies and you still play games, it's really hard to say otherwise. And if they still do, it becomes a difficult situation. And I don't want anybody to ever have to say, like, hey, create a rift between your parents. Don't ever let that happen, but don't give up on your dreams at the same time. Most parents now, after talking and seeing, what can happen or what's to come, usually change their mindset and they go, hey, this is actually really cool. We want to support this.
Where would you think to look for an esports scholarship?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So for anybody looking, you can do the traditional Google search. You'll get a ton of, I guess, not so helpful links, but I would use sites like Be Recruited. In fact, that's the number one I would recommend right now is Be Recruited. And it is kind of like a Facebook, Twitter, where you build your own profile. You say what game it is that you want to play or do play, or games, multiple. And then say university like myself can go on there and say, hey, I'm looking to recruit X player in Overwatch, who plays Overwatch, and then I can look up your profile and reach out to you. And likewise, so you need to understand the conference. There are conferences in collegiate that you want to play in. So say this school, you're interested in this school, right? Let's say we'll use Kansas Wesleyan as an example. You're interested in Kansas Wesleyan. All right, well, we play in the NACE conference, or NACE, and from there you're like, okay, well, what is NACE? If you go to that conference, you will find a list of all the schools. Was the Big Ten, I think, has one. There's several like smaller divisions elsewhere. So look up those schools that you're interested in and look up what conference they are in, and you might find other universities that, hey, I want to check that out. I want to visit that university. And pretty much any university in a conference like NACE will offer scholarships of some type. If that's not working for you, reach out to, like, on the Collegiate Hub. The Collegiate Hub, TESPA, there's usually collegiate teams posted in there saying, hey, we're looking to recruit X players for X game. Keep an eye out for that. And on the side, you should be able to see, who is a director or who is a coach. And you can just PM them. I've yet to meet somebody that runs a program in collegiate that isn't willing to just openly talk to you like almost immediately, and not just about their program, but they'll help you find what's right for you, because ultimately it's about building a community, and it's about making sure that everybody has the opportunity that they want academically and in esports. So that's what I recommend. Be Recruited, do a little Google searching, look at the conferences, and talk to the people in charge that you see in Discord.
What is the worst thing you had to do as a coach?
Benching a player. For me, this is for me. The worst thing that I've ever had to do as a coach is benching a player, every time, because it doesn't matter. Let's say the player's poor attitude or they're not showing up to scrims. It makes it to where it's like, okay, hey, I have XYZ example of why we need to bench you, but especially in in what I work collegiate and contenders, it's really hard to tell a player, hey, you're not playing. And I don't mean like, hey, it's not hard to get the words out, but when you're at that level, even if they're struggling, this is or was a passion for them at one time. And it's kind of like saying, hey, we need you to not play, right? And that that's going to affect them emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically. And then from there, it's my job as a coach or a director or man, whatever, to make sure that we turn what looks like a negative, because being benched will always be seen as a negative by most people, into a positive and saying, hey, let's get you back up to speed. Let's figure out what's going on. Let's work individually. So that's the nice part, is being able to sit down and spend more time with them. But benching a player, it's never fun. The only time that it's easy is when the player basically does it for themselves, and even then, that's usually because there's a PR nightmare, and it's unfortunate.
Talking to a guy that was in our esports before this, and I asked him if he had any questions, and he said he'll eventually figure it out. I told him Boostio was on your team, and he asked, well, how does he feel about the famous GOAT comp?
Goat comp. I guess I'll answer it this way. It's a great comp. Don't get me wrong. It's great because of what it does to the T2 scene. If you don't know how to play against it, you get run through. More notably, after the change up with Goats and bringing XQC in, it didn't run as well, but they just didn't have enough time to mesh and play together. In my opinion, I think if they scrimmed, they would have been top of trials. So with that comp, the aggression needed to play it. It's similar to like quad tank, where you just bully in, you take advantage of people not being able to react. In our case, I don't want to give away too much. We figured out what was our best way to counter it. And against Goats, it was a very close game, probably the closest game we had the entire way through trials. And they are really good players. I don't want anybody to take that away from them, though they are all really good players. But once you understand how to play against that comp, or I get 3-3 Goats, it goes back to the rock paper scissors of what Overwatch is. So as a team, you need to understand like what your strengths and weaknesses are against it, and not panic. A lot of teams panic when Goats runs into you, and they take advantage of that, or anybody running that comp takes advantage of you splitting up and panicking. So just stay calm, understand what counters it. I'm not gonna go into that because that's some trade secrets. But that's kind of how I feel. I feel like it's one of the best comps you could run at the moment if done right. If you aren't going to be aggressive with it, or you don't understand why you're playing it, you're just going to get smacked. And the other team's just going to run over you. You'll be down ults. And it's probably going to take you about 2 minutes to recoup from that. And at that time, you're literally out of time then.
How do you feel about girls being in esports?
I wish the split was more. I wish it was closer to 50-50. There's no reason why girls shouldn't be in esports at all, period. I don't care what anybody thinks. There's just no reason why a girl shouldn't be able to do the exact same thing as a guy, get on a keyboard, bring the same communication, the same skill, and play, and they should get the exact same offers. That is, in a lot of communities, that's being talked about a lot. Like, hey, how do we make it, to where it feels like, you're not. I guess the stereotypical example is, you don't want somebody, a girl gamer, to come in and be afraid to talk or be afraid to show themselves on stream, because the minute they do, they're just going to get lambasted by a bunch of people just for being a girl. You want them to be able to come in the team, esports in general, and be just like anybody else. And that's what the issue is right now, is creating a community, and a culture that they see it no differently, right? The player is the player. And I really would like to see colleges, and pro teams. I think the Dragons, unfortunately for their record, but I think they set a good example. I'd like to see more of that. I'm not going to say that there's as big of a pool of skill. If there is, it's unknown, and it's unknown because of the culture we have right now. And if that's the case, that's unfortunate. That players of great skill, especially girls, feel like they have to hide that. And I think that plays a part of it too. But I would like to see more equality, closer to a 50-50 split. It's nowhere near that right now, not even close.
How do you feel about older people getting into esports?
Like age-wise, 40 and above, or like what's
So the last time I was doing this, we talked about the silver snipers and all that, but uh, I wouldn't say like up there where the silver snipers are, but like probably down to about 35 and up, most likely.
okay? Uh, well, I don't have an issue with it personally. I'm 27, so I'm not too far from it. I think anybody of that age demographic that are just now getting into esports, sports, whatever, great. The more people who are interested and enjoy it and want to play, the better. And we're at a time where you need that. You need it. This can't just be a hey, I'm a high schooler, college guy, girl, whatever, trying to get into esports. No, you need the world, from all ages to get on board with this. It needs to turn into something like baseball, football, hockey, etc., where everybody of all ages can sit down and play. They can talk. They can watch. They can go to the events. I think that's crazy. I was at DreamHack Austin, and there was a granddad with his grandson there, and it was his first event ever. And I think they actually highlighted these two, in one of their promo videos, and it was really cool to see. Like, hey, because of his grandson, he wanted to come see what it was like, and now he's a fan of esports. So I think the 30s to 40s group are even better because they're closer to our ages. They can relate to a lot of stuff. And especially if they get into the scene as a professional, that's a lot of experience, life experience that they bring to it. And I can't see anything but positives. I think it would be pretty asinine to say that it would be bad for anybody to get into esports, either as a viewer, player, or working in the industry. I think I do want to touch on that. Some of the best people in here, Garvey from Twitch, is definitely in that age range, and he's probably one of the most influential, if not the most influential, across from collegiate. And I can say if it wasn't for some of the things that we've talked about, and the experiences from him that I've learned about, I would be a lesser person. And then there's other people closer to my age, Justin Patry, probably one of the most important guys in esports that nobody knows about. He has a lot of influence. Dan from Maryville, also E United. It's a great guy to talk to. These people that are my age and above, them being in esports is just a bonus. It's a plus. It makes sure that everybody to come following will have that guideline of how to move forward, and it needs to keep happening.
If you could change anything in Overwatch, what would it be?
The league or the game?
The game itself.
If I could change anything, I think they're going the right route with what they just did, trying to do the looking for group thing. I would like to see, I myself and a lot of the players from what I see in the community would like to see the option of where you're already pre-selecting your role before you even like as you're queuing up. They want to see that live. That way, just like League of Legends, where you can say, "Hey, I want to play bot lane," and you queue into that. A lot of players want to see that option, or at least test it, see how it works. So that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see Blizzard test that out and see how it affects the scene if you queue in to only be able to play one specific role. Some people would say, "Oh, well, that keeps comps from like 3-3, and it's like, well, no, it doesn't. It just means that if you don't do what you're saying you want to do, you can be reported. Which, I mean, people report for anything and everything now, so I could see that being an issue. But I'd like to see that tested out. The system's on the way to being what it needs to be. I want to see more trial and error. Right now, there's a lot of error, so I want to see more trial, I guess.
Going off from changing, would you add anything to Overwatch?
Oh, I don't know if there's anything in particular I personally would want to see added to it. It's a good question, actually. I wasn't even really thinking too much about that. I think from the game itself, not too much. From the competitive side, yes. I'd like to see a lot more support for the tier 2, tier 3 teams coming from Blizzard. And I think they're trying to figure that out too. So it's not a knock on them. I just, as somebody who's also in that, and I think Collegiate gets a pretty good amount of support with Tespa from Blizzard. I'd like to see, you know, kind of similar, if not more, for your professional teams. And I think, okay, I guess that would be nice. A in-client representation. So you have your AL teams represented in client, and sometimes you'll see like contenders or other streams. I'd like to see similar to like what Riot does, where you can buy like the little icons of those challenger, OGN, NA, EU teams, just something that allows the public to just be more supportive. I think that actually, yeah, that would be what I would add, like to the client side or the game in general. And it looks like the public opinion of that is pretty supportive over being able to show their love for their favorite teams across the globe.
Is there any other thing that you would like to say or anything? Final
Uh,
thoughts?
in general, I think what you're doing right now, it's great. I'm actually really excited. This, why I want to touch up. I want to see people like you at the high school level keep doing it. Don't stop. I think when we bridge all three levels, high school, college, and professional, esports is around to stay. But once we bridge all these communities, once you like leaders like you go to the next level, you continue a cycle that can only be positive, and I hope that continues.
Thank you for watching this video. I would also like to thank Gibb for letting me be able to interview you. I would also like to thank James for getting in touch with him for me. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified for the next video. Bye.